Welcome back to the channel. This is a More Better SN coming at you with another super budget deck tech. This is a Legacy Mutate deck. This deck is from the Ikoria set, and these cards are super cheap online right now. TCG Player, which, you know, I think TCG Player is the biggest ripoff on the internet, but says you can build this deck for $37. I built it on another site called cardtrader.com that it takes longer to get the cards, but I was able to make this deck for $23. So this is a $23 deck tech for a 5-color, very competitive deck, in my opinion. Just playing, you know, some kitchen table with it, because I actually purchased this deck in paper, you know, winning multiple games and having this go off like crazy with the Mutate ability. So let's jump into the game, or into the deck, and see what we got here. It's a 65 card deck. I made it that because we start off with a 0-cost creature. So this is Rogrok, the son of Roga. He is a 0/1 for 0. First strike, menace, trample. So this deck, the main thing you care about is keywords. So having something that you can build off of that already comes with first strike, menace, and trample is insane, especially because it costs 0 to cast. You can throw this down right before you mutate on top of it, and then it'll no longer be called this. It'll be called whatever the mutated creature is. It'll become that, so it'll no longer be legendary, and then you can just do it again. I threw these 4 in here, and that's why it's a 65 card deck, because these don't count towards anything really, because it's 0 mana. But and it just adds more to the deck, where we can have other creatures that are going to go off and do the things that we want to do, like more creatures with mutate. All right, while we're on that topic, let's look at other creatures that we're going to build off of with good keywords for cheap. We have the Healer's Hawk. So for 1 mana, you're going to have a 1/1 flying lifelink creature that you can build off of, and having that lifelink right off the bat is amazing, especially when you start building off of it right away, and then you have, you know, a 4/4 flying lifelinker right off the bat. We have the Polywog Symbiote. This creature reduces the mutate costs for all the other creatures, so it makes more value, especially if you have multiple of these on the field. You can mutate on this if you want. And then when you cast a creature spell that's not a mutate, but you actually cast the creature spell that has mutate, you get to draw a card and discard a card. We got Paradise Druid. This can tap for mana. It's a good way to ramp, but also, as long as it's untapped, it has hexproof, so you can just leave one of these big bodies on the field and just keep building off of it and getting all the value, and it'll have hexproof the entire time, so that there's no way that your opponents can really remove it. Now, after we've done, I have another creature that we build off of, but this is more of a late game thing. It's the Chromanticore. This is an enchantment creature. It costs 1 of each color. It's a 4/4 with flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, lifelink. So you can put this out, since we have all the mana to pay for it, and you can mutate on top of this, and it already will come with those 5 keywords. Now, if you don't want to do that, and you already have a big creature out there that you want to keep working on and keep making bigger, you can pay an extra 2 along with 1 of each color, and it'll give the creature an enchantment. It'll be 4/4/4, and then all those keywords. So again, lifelink, vigilance, trample, first strike, flying, like that's like the best keywords you could get right there in one creature. All right, now that we talked about what we're building off of, now let's talk about the mutate creatures themselves. So we have the Gem Razor. where you can put this in for 4 if you'd like, or you can just mutate for 3. So if you have that Poliwag symbiote out, you can just pay 2 green, and you can put this on your Healer's Hawk. Now you have a flying, lifelink, reach, trample, 4/4. And every time it mutates, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, which is super powerful. And with these mutate abilities, every time you mutate on top of it again, it just stacks all of these mutate triggers. So all those triggers go off again because your creature mutated. So every single time you mutate on top of this creature again, whether it becomes the top card or the bottom card, you're still going to get to destroy an artifact or an enchantment every single time. Now, the most important card of this entire deck is the Migratory Greathorn. You can mutate this for 3. It's a 3/4, and it says, whenever this creature mutates, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. We are a 5-color deck, so we have one of each land at least, and every time you mutate on top of this, you can get those lands that you may not have in your hand and throw them onto the battlefield so that you can cast some of these other mutate creatures later on. Since there's not a lot of, as you can see up here in the color pie, not a lot of black and red, so I only have one of each of those lands in there, mainly Bant, but you know, with those 2 being in there, you want to grab those lands when you can, especially with that you can just search your whole library and put a land card in. All right, now we got Snap Decks, Apex of the Hunt. This costs more to mutate than to actually just cast it, and it's for a good reason, because it has double strike, and whenever this creature mutates, it deals 4 damage to a target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and you gain 4 life. So every single time you mutate this, even with something super cheap to mutate on top of it or below it, you're going to get to do 4 damage, possibly take out a creature, and then gain 4 life. And then now whatever creature you put this mutate into has double strike. So if you're putting it on Healer's Hawk, then now you have a 3/5 flying lifelink double strike. So now you're going to be gaining 6 life through the air. All right, we got Cub Warden, another lifelink creature. This is the same cost, just different ways for the actually caster to mutate it. And whenever it mutates, you get to create 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink that you can use later on to mutate on top of again if you needed to spread out your mutates, or if someone kills your creature, the one that you've been building on, you now have 2 cat creature tokens with lifelink. You can also use them as chump blockers too, so you can go in with your big boys, and then you can keep your 1/1 lifelinkers back to block or whatever you want to do. But this is another great card. You have the Parcel Beast. This is one of the ones where you're going to get a lot of value out of, where your mutate cost only costs 2, 1 green and 1 blue. And then it triggers all of your other mutate abilities, so you're going to get all that extra value. And then it gives the ability for you to pay 1 and tap it, and then look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put the card on, onto the battlefield, put it in your hand. So it's basically a 1-mana draw 1 or ramp you. So this is another great creature to have on your in your mutate hand, just because I only have 2 of them in there because it doesn't really have that much value, because that doesn't have any keywords. It's only a 2/4, but just having 2 of them in there to just re-trigger all of your mutate abilities, but also to give you that pay 1, tap it to ramp, is another great ability. Now this is the big boy right here. This is the best mutate card, I think, in the entire Ikoria set. You have to pay 6 to mutate it, but for good reason, because it is a 6/6. And then it says, whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile X permanent cards, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. Put those permanent cards onto the battlefield. So by the time you get to 6 mutate, you've maybe mutated this one creature, 4 or 5 times. So then when you mutate with this on top of it, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your library and then put all those permanent cards onto the battlefield. And as you can see, this entire deck is permanents. So you're going to flood the board with a bunch of permanents every time you mutate this thing. So this is the all-star right here for the deck. We got a bunch of one-offs now, just because of their abilities and because of their stats. These are some 6/6s, whereas all the other creatures that we were looking at before, a 3/5, a 3/5, 2/4, you know, 3/4, 4/4. Like these are where you're going to get a lot of the power. You got a 6/6 right here. This is Brokos, Apex of Forever. This is mutate cost is 5. And it has trample, and then you can cast it from your graveyard using its mutate ability. So if you mutated this on top of something, or you just cast it straight up as a 6/6 trampler, and they kill it, you can pay its mutate cost right here to bring it back to the battlefield. I mainly use it for its 6/6 ability, or it's a 6/6 power, and it's legendary, so that's why I just have one of them in here. And then we have Aluna, Apex of Wishes, which is costs more to mutate it, but it's a flying trample 6/6. And it says, whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card on the battlefield or into your hand. So it's kind of like this, but you don't do X. You just go until you find one that is a permanent. So it's basically, look at the top card of your library and either put it in your hand if it's a mutate that you want to cast next turn or that turn, or just put it into your hand to do that. Or just if it's like another creature, like a Healer's Hawk or something like that, you can just put that right on the battlefield. So another big legendary creature with great value. Last one off we have is another legendary 5/5. This mutate ability is a lot higher than the casting cost by 2, but that's because it has Death Touch and Lifelink. So if you have one of these big bodies and it has Death Touch too, that's incredible. It says, whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, like I was saying before, the power of these creatures isn't very high. Like I was saying, 3, 3. So you can get a bunch of value from this. You can bring in at least 2, 3, or 4 creatures, depending on what you have in your graveyard. And all those rogue racks, these guys, these cost 0. So if you have any of those in the graveyard, you can just throw all of them out there. You know, we could throw one of them because of the legendary rule, but this card's great. I love it. I've used it a couple times in a game, and it was kind of the difference maker. So I can't say enough about this card either. All right, we got 2 more mutate creatures. We got the Pouncing Shore Shark, where this has Flash. So if you have a little tiny creature out there and someone thinks, ooh, I can attack, and they'll just have to chump block or let it through, you can Flash mutate this in. And then it says, whenever this creature mutates, you may return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So not even is it just a good disrupting play because of the ability to bounce something or block something bigger, but every single time you, like I was saying before, all these mutate abilities stack. So you mutate on this again, you get to keep returning things to their hand, and it's just constantly returning permanents to their hand, or creatures to their hand. So you'll have a clear line to just go finish them off with all the different mutate creatures that you've already created. And the last one is the Dreamtail Heron. This is 4 mana to mutate it, and it has flying. And it just says whenever this creature mutates, draw a card. So we already have all this other value of being able to bring in a whole bunch of stuff from exile, and from another one bring it off the top, or another one bring it off the top. But, you know, you can just draw cards too. So, and it gives it flying for something that you maybe didn't build off of. Like if you did this, it'd be First Strike, Menace, Trample, and flying. You'd be able to just draw some cards. So that's great too. All right, let's get to the mana base. That's probably the most important. All right, we got 4 Ancient Ziggurats. So add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to play creature spells. So our entire deck is creature spells. So this is just basically a nice 4 of to cast whatever we want. It's like a wild card in our mana base, which is definitely needed for this deck. It's 25 lands, because some of these casting costs for these mutates, you know, can get a little expensive. But other than that, we have the Ancient Ziggurat, and then we have the Seaside Citadel, because I'm not paying for Spar's headquarters. We're trying to do a budget deck here. and I don't need the cycling ability with all the card draw and all the other things that we're going to be getting. So this is definitely a better purchase than Sparrow's Headquarters. And then we just have a bunch of basics. I have all the Ikoria, or the whatever the lands base are. I don't forget what set this is from. It's from recently. I have the forests, islands, one mountain, a bunch of plains, one swamp. So I have one of each of these because you can go fetch them with the Migratory Greathorn. And then I have a world tree. This is an optional thing. I had one of these already just laying around, so I threw it in there. But when I was online pricing this out, from what I looked at to get the price for this card's a little over $4 now. So this is not very budget to have as a one-off in your deck. So you can replace this with, you know, whatever land you think you need more of, maybe black, maybe red, or whatever it is. But I put this in just because I had one already, and we saw the mana base up here. It's mostly green. So it's good to have an extra green land, but then also gives the ability that if you have 6 or more lands are just add 1 mana of any color. This is probably one of the best abilities of any land ever. So when we're ramping like crazy with this guy, we're going to have 6 lands on the field in no time. So now all of our lands tap for anything. So it's not about what colors we have, it's just about how much mana we have. So casting a Chromanticore is not going to be as intimidating as most people would think it would be. Or casting some of these a lot of different mixtures of colors on all these different creatures like this up here. Like, all of them are different. A lot of the main parts of our deck are green or blue or white. That's why we have so much Bant right here. And that's why I added the Seaside Citadel, to just add some more flexibility of being able to cast all those things and not hoping to just draw into those lands. If we had just all basics. All right, our average mana cost is 3.25, but I wouldn't worry about that too much. Like I said, we're going to be ramping like crazy. We have more ramp right here. We have reducing cost of the mutate spells, and I can't say enough about this deck. When I was looking for a budget deck to build, when I was making a new deck to play with my friends, I thought, let's look at some older sets that maybe nobody really plays with anymore and see what kind of cards and what kind of mechanics that are out there that we could use. And this was one of the main ones that I saw that I was like, that looks really interesting. I need to look into this more and do some more research. And it paid off because this deck is great. We also have a companion on this deck. We have Giganta. I know he's gotten recently banned in some certain formats or something like that, but I don't know. I think he's fine here. He's from Ikoria as well. This is the set that came with all the companions. So this is this says no card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol and its mana cost. So if you look down here, there are other creatures that I could have put in here that had double of a certain color, but I would have rather had the Giganta than putting in those other creatures, because all these do the same thing. It's mostly the black mutate creatures, so I just didn't put a lot of the black mutate creatures in there. And a lot of people might say that was a mistake, but I think that this card is a little more important, just because if you're coming into one of these control decks that keeps killing your creatures and you run out of cards in your hand, this is just one of those creatures that you can just cast. You pay 3, you put it into your hand, and then the next turn you can cast it for 5. And then let's say you drew a Chromanticore that costs 1 of each color. Now you can tap your Giganta, and it says add 1 of each color. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana costs. Well, that's fine, because we have a Chromanticore that costs literally every single one of those colors. So that's mainly the main reason why this is in the deck. But you can also build off of it too, because it is a 5/5, and it can tap for mana. So that's the deck. We can see our mana curve here. It's kind of all over the place, but we don't really care, because we're not really looking at these numbers here. We're looking more at the mutate costs. Like, this is a 5 mana card that's here when it should be really here, because we're not going to be casting it for its main cost. We're going to be casting it for its mutate cost. So You got to look at all the mutate costs of all these creatures, where most of them are cheaper than the actual creature themselves. Like this one, 5, and that's 4 again. And then we got this one's more because of the double strike, but this one's the same. We got the Starks, which is a little bit more. This one's way cheaper. This one's cheaper. This one's cheaper, and this one's the most important right here. So yeah, like I said, this deck, I built it for $23, and that's mana base, all the creatures, everything that you see, 65 cards for $23. So if you like this deck, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all the algorithm things. I will post a link to this deck list in the description. So this is a More Better Ascend, and we'll see you for the next one.